Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. My name is Alyssa, and this is my new podcast, Life Between Pages. This is going to be a space where I will share my love of reading with some book reviews and book recommendations. I will also share my love of music with some song recommendations, and then I will share occasionally some personal stories. My love of reading started at a young age, and I read a lot in high school. I read your typical, very popular series that were around during the time. Twilight was super popular when I was in high school, and I read that whole series, loved it. I also read the Divergent series and the Maze Runner series and a ton of other books. And then I went to college and took a break because I was focused on college. And then about 4 years ago, I read a couple of duologies, but again, didn't really read a whole lot still because I was getting my master's degree. And then almost a year ago, I borrowed a series from my sister called A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I dove headfirst into reading again. Became so obsessed, so immersed in the fantasy realm, and I loved it. I read that whole series in under 2 weeks, and I became obsessed. Still obsessed, still love that series. Cannot wait for the next book to come out. But I dove headfirst. I bought merchandise, t-shirts, keychain, a cup. One of my friends had already read it, and then we quickly got our other friend to read it, and our weekly girls' night turned into an unofficial book club for a while. Now we're back to watching movies and then also still talking about books. We have a shared spreadsheet with 3 of my friends and my sister and myself, where we share our current books that we're reading, share the reviews for each, we rate it, and then we also have a shared TBR list where we can comment on each other's TBR list and share whether we've read it or not, if we recommend it, if we want to also read it, and we're just huge into reading right now, and I love it. It is amazing. My husband probably thinks I read too much, but that's his opinion. My love of music has been a lifelong journey. I have always had a special place for music in my heart, and I listen to pretty much anything and everything. My Spotify playlists are all over the place. I keep creating new playlists, adding new songs, finding new bands. I like to share my playlist with my friends and then get recommendations from other people for new bands or songs to listen to. My recent discovery, which I know I'm kind of behind the times on this, but my recent discovery has been the band Sleep Token. And again, also fully obsessed with them, and no shame. I love it. I love their music. There hasn't been a song of theirs that I have not loved. As far as the personal stories that I'm going to share, I will have kind of a range of what I share, what I talk about. I will try to keep things as safe as possible. I don't want to upset anybody by what I share, but I also probably won't share anybody's names in the stories that I share. Most of it will be about my own experiences, but obviously will include other people in those stories. And the reason why I have decided to share those personal stories is because a couple of weeks ago, I felt compelled to do this. I've been thinking about doing this podcast for a while. Last year, my sister and I talked about doing one together, but we spent a little bit of time looking into it, coming up with names, and then it kind of died out. And then, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I was in church and I could not focus for no matter how hard I tried. But I felt compelled that this is something I needed to do. I have experienced and gone through a lot in my life. But I like to talk about my experiences because I think that it'll help somebody, or at least I hope that it will. So it's not all going to be negative or harder topics, but some of it will. But I still hope that somebody can get something good from it. Whether it's that somebody watching this is going through the same thing, or maybe they know somebody who's going through the same thing, and they can learn from my experience and how I was able to grow through that experience, and how I've still been able to remain positive about life and look back and look at the situation a little bit differently than whenever I was going through it. So that is the gist of what this podcast is going to be. And a little bit about myself. I am a married mom with 2 kids. I'm a project coordinator, and I got my master's in health administration a couple years ago, and I'm currently working to become a project manager. So that's the current journey for me. Now, I decided I would start this one off with a couple of book reviews. I read recently a romantasy called The Prince of Never by Juno Hart, and I really enjoyed this book. It is part of a series, but they're kind of standalone books with it like interconnected in the series. And so this book was about a human girl. Her name is Laura, and she gets sent into the fairy realm where she meets a huntsman named Everend, but he goes by Ever. And he thinks that she's a goblin to start with, but he is the prince of the fairy realm, or I guess of his kingdom in the fairy realm. And so he decides that he's going to take her to his kingdom and let his mom, the queen, decide what will happen with her. Now, on their journey, Laura quickly learns that Ever is very annoyed by her talking. So she decides that she's going to annoy him to no end by nonstop talking. And she even starts to call him Never. And there's a moment where I just laughed so much because she kind of has this moment where she goes, "Do you want to know why I call you Never?" And he is very annoyed and kind of has the "I don't really care" attitude. And she goes, "Well, I'll tell you anyway. I wish I had never come here. I wish I had never met you." And then his response to that is essentially, "Okay, get to know." Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, but I don't want to share any spoilers, but I highly recommend it. I rated it a 3. It was a really good book, but the ending was pretty abrupt, in my opinion. But overall, it was good. I do plan to read the rest of the series. Eventually, they are on my TBR, one of my TBR lists. I have like 3. And then I finished another book last night, actually, and I finished The King of Wrath by Anna Huang. Now, I already read Anna's other series, the Twisted Love series. Again, those are interconnected, and I absolutely love that series. I thought it was really well written. I loved the characters and like how they each had their own individual story. I know that that's how this series is also going to go, and I'm excited to read more. I have the first three books, but from my understanding, I think there's going to be 7 books, 1 for each sin. So this was an arranged marriage type of situation, but it turns out that the father of Vivian, our female main character, he actually blackmailed our male main character, Dante, into this arranged marriage by threatening his brother. So Vivian goes into this arranged marriage trying to please her parents and do what is asked of her as the proper daughter. So she doesn't really think much of it. She's not super happy, but she is willing to make it work, not realizing that Dante has his own agenda and is actively trying to figure out how to erase the blackmail evidence that her father has against him and then form his wrath plan, as I'll put it. Overall, it was a really good story. Some of it, pretty standard with the enemies to lovers type of situation, but I would still rate it a 3. It was spicy, had some spice into it. And so again, I would give it a 3 for a spice rating. And that is pretty much all I'm going to share. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I will continue to read that series. Like I said, I have the first 3, so I will probably start book 2 tonight, and we'll see how long it takes me to read that. So that is the gist of this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys like to follow along with me and my journey and the stories that I'm going to share, and I'll see you later. And this is my life between the pages.